Welcome to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. Joining me today is Geoffrey Toffetti, the CEO of Frontline Performance Group, or FPG, a global leader in service-based sales solutions. With a career spanning from valet to C-suite, Geoffrey's journey reflects a deep commitment to hospitality. Fun fact, Geoffrey's upselling skills at his first job at the Florida's beach resort were so effective, he was promoted to manager because he was earning too much commission. I can relate to that. I had my first job also as a waiter, so we were all hustling at that time at a young age. Today, he's focused on bringing FPG's proven strategies to the food and beverage sector. So welcome, Geoffrey, and thanks very much for joining today.
Thank you, Sam-Erik. It's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
You started your career at the front desk. What did that early experience teach you about human behavior that still guides your leadership skills today?
Yeah, a few things probably. One, certainly being a frontline employee and being managed, it taught me a lot about how not to manage people, because you take people for granted and then you expect them to treat your guests, with amazing care, and they're not being cared for. So that was a huge influence on me later in life, that you treat your employees the way you want them to treat your guest. That was sort of the truism that I took away from that. And also that people, you can never prejudge a person when they walk up to the counter. You don't know anything about them. And it's really easy to get caught in the trap of assuming things about people. And I always used to say, I was also a valet for a time. I would get bigger tips from the guy who pulled up in a pickup truck coming straight from a construction site than a Mercedes, and it was a doctor. So you learn to never prejudge people. I would say those were the two biggest that I took away and still think about today.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I also started my career behind the desk. One of the things was that we didn't have a computer screen to stare at and to kind of look down and then look up if we think the guest is there. But nowadays, I think it's one of the trickiest things is to create that eye contact in those first 7 seconds that the customer expects, that there is a welcoming feeling and so on. I think we were a little bit better about that without the screen. Won't you agree?
I 100% agree. And I was fortunate enough to work at a private hotel, but the leadership team had been recruited away from a Ritz-Carlton. So they instituted all of the Ritz-Carlton kind of training and stuff, and body posture, tone of voice, eye contact, press your shirts, all of that was part of the deal. So I was fortunate to have that training very early on, but there's nothing more irritating than walking up to a counter and no one makes eye contact. It drives me crazy, because even just a nod, an acknowledgement, even if you're busy, you say, "I will be right with you. I'm so sorry," calms everyone down.
Yes.
But when you're waiting for them to look at you, it's so irritating.
That's one of those things. When I walk into a hotel lobby, I immediately scan around and see who's there. The staff, what are they? Are they noticing me? And I have to admit, I had the privilege of, unfortunate, to live in a Ritz-Carlton residence when I lived in Dubai with my wife. And one of the things they did, they had somebody in the lobby. So you have always that contact with a person before you came to the desk. And you don't see that in all the hotels, which I think Ritz-Carlton did a very good job with that.
Certainly, yeah. The luxury class of hotels tend to do a pretty good job of that, but it's the full service mid-scale that I think there's opportunity to get a little better at that.
Frontline employees are often underestimated. What's the biggest misconception hotel owners have about the revenue potential of their front desk and the service staff?
Yeah, it's dramatic. I think a lot of hoteliers, it's getting better because we've been at this now for 15 years, but in food and beverage or at the front desk, I think the biggest thing they overlook is that they are a revenue center. You should treat them as a business unit, each one, because they can generate 2 times their cost. And as a team, they can generate, 3 to 5, 7, even we've seen as high as low double-digit RevPAR impact. And I think a lot of hoteliers, they just don't think that way. They think it's all about the marketing online and it's the beauty of the property and those kind of things. But you can have a mediocre property and a really well-trained front desk, and they can bring home the bacon for sure. And they can engage your guests in a more collaborative way to enhance their experience. It raises the bar on service and on revenue.
Sure. I mean, there are so many people that think that actually all you think you should be caring about is your room revenue, which is absolutely not true. How about the rest? You have tremendous upselling opportunities which the front office staff or the reception staff can accomplish by recommending something. And then probably the guest will thank them when they leave that, well, thank you for recommending this, because they were smart enough to think about what could this guest want, and they overheard something.
That's right. I mean, we always say it's about recommendation. You don't ask, you recommend. But one of the things that we found out from our clients is that when you have a really well-established upsell program and they are recommending to every guest, you're only going to convert 5 to 7% of them into an enhanced room. But if you do it consistently, room complaints drop because you gave them a choice. So when they get to their room, they're not like angry. They're saying, well, they did just offer me a suite or a better room, and I said no. So they actually find that there's a strong correlation between more upsell revenue and less room complaints.
Yeah. You're taking a company from embedding consultants in hotels to building a scalable software as service, or SaaS platform. What was the hardest mindset shift you personally had to make in that transition?
There is a certain pleasure in being a subject matter expert or a trusted advisor to your clients. And I think our entire culture, it wasn't just me, our DNA is helping people. We're a tribe of people, because we were sending them into other environments. So the biggest mind shift was we're no longer going to have that level of contact. We're going to have to work through our tools and through our technology. And that took our culture probably a good year and a half to sort of adjust to. And so that was the big one, is not being face to face with customers as often and as frequently.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same, in a very different context, that I was used to dealing with hotel guests at one point in my career, then dealing with hotel owners, and also dealing with the lovely headquarters of a chain hotel. But then when that was over, then I had to come up with something else. And this is what I'm doing now, meeting people like you, very interesting people like you. And we have this conversation that I used to have just over a cup of coffee. Now we just have to imagine that coffee.
So that's right. I finished my coffee. I had a cup of coffee here, but okay. I finished it.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. It is an adjustment to the digital world. Lately, doing podcasts has been really interesting, but lately I've been trying to travel a little more and go see clients, but there was a while where they didn't really want you to fly out to see them anymore. Everyone wants to do it on video.
Oh, yeah, well, that is nothing like shaking hands and looking in the eye in real life, not over through a lens, for sure. Many hoteliers still resist technology. What do you say to an independent owner who sees tech as a threat rather than enable than it would enable things?
Yeah, it's a common topic of conversation. I think that hoteliers tend to lag in technology because they're in a people business. So it's hard to conceptualize, how can I deploy technology without undermining hospitality, which I think is one of the fears. And in some cases, it's a well-founded fear, but we believe that right now, the technology that's available now and emerging now, particularly with AI, is that this technology can help support your people mission. It can automate things that are a waste of time now and let your people focus more on taking care of the guests. So we keep reassuring people that the technology we deploy is there to help the employee, not replace the employee. And so if you could get 10% efficiency out of your team, and put that time, don't take it out, don't downsize, invest it back to your guest, you could enhance the guest experience that much more and build more loyalty to your property or to your company.
Yeah, and then you had to take a look at the job descriptions, how that has to change, that your team is becoming more strategic and you let the AI do the sort of the work that you're used to be assigned to through Excel sheets.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. Automate everything that is not guest facing and let the humans do what they do, which is interact with other humans.
Yeah. Remember COVID? It was not too long ago. It was quite long.
I'll never
Seems like
forget it.
long ago, but You lived through the collapse of revenue during COVID. What did that moment reveal about your own resilience and decision-making under pressure?
Yeah, and I actually got promoted to CEO right in the middle of that. So that was an interesting time to take over a company. But yeah, I mean, it was in March of 2020, we lost 90% of our revenue. And I think what it taught me about myself and more importantly, my immediate team was that we were courageous enough to go headlong into that situation. We immediately started calling all our customers and telling them, look, no pressure. We're going to suspend all of our agreements. You don't have to worry about us. Go take care of yourselves. That was a big step and allowed us to really reemerge from COVID on strong footing with our clients. But we managed to retain our entire senior leadership team. No one defected. We all took 60% pay cuts. We held on to the staff as long as we could. We did end up having to furlough, but we held on. It was months that we had no revenue and we were still paying people. So it taught me that the culture that we had built was sound and that it was resilient. I like the word that you chose there, and that we could survive anything. And I think when we reemerged, we felt confident that there is nothing that the universe could throw at us that we wouldn't survive and come out the other side stronger and better for it. So I wouldn't wish it to ever happen again, but there is some silver linings in it from a business standpoint that, and even personally having to work from home, I was on the road three days a week for years. And I got to see my kids go through high school. I got to make them breakfast. That's something I was never able to do before. So COVID was brutal in a lot of ways, but it was also a gift in some ways.
Yeah. For many, it was the same. Yeah. If you emphasize empowering frontline staff with confidence, when was a time in your career where your own confidence was challenged, and how did you overcome that?
Wow. There's one that just jumps into the front of the line of probably many. When I was a young manager, I was like a middle manager. I'd left hospitality. I was in a different industry. My boss was a very accomplished business person, Harvard MBA, and I didn't go to college. I'm sort of a, autodidact. I taught myself what I know. And I had kind of a rough around the edges personality at the time. I guess I had a chip on my shoulder, and he called me out for it. And it was definitely shook my confidence. I thought I was riding high, and then I found out that I was irritating my peers and losing the confidence of the CEO. And so I just had to take a deep introspection and say, I'm either going to run from this situation and claim that they're wrong, or I'm going to take it to heart and adjust. And that's what I chose to do. And I emerged a much more influential executive because of that. And there was also a time that I went through around that same time where my work schedule was brutal. I had a baby at home. It was awful. And I kind of deemed that period of my career the crucible. And I've come to understand in hindsight, looking backwards and dealing with younger people, there's almost every successful executive or entrepreneur has been through some period like that and the crucible. And when I see executives fail, it's normally because they skipped that part. They got promoted too early, or they avoided confrontation, and then they get to the really tough stuff and they're not equipped. That whole period of my life shook my confidence to the core, but I came back out of it feeling stronger about myself and more approachable and more influential executive for it.
Yeah. Also, I think it's, did you have a mentor early on in your career that kind of guided you, or were you on your own?
I was on my own. And I think that probably cost me a lot of pain, but made me very, tough and resilient. But yeah, find a mentor if you don't have one. If you're upwardly mobile and you're ambitious to climb, make sure you've got someone in your corner giving you good advice that will be brutally honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great advice, Geoffrey. So if you could design the perfect hospitality leader of the future, what are some 3 threats that would be non-negotiable?
3 traits. Well, one that is true for everyone, in my opinion, is you got to be humble. And when you're humble, you can learn. If you're not humble, it's very difficult to develop. You've got to be willing to do the tough stuff. I despise what I call ivory tower leaders that will delegate but will never do or have never done. I think that is a really bad trait in a leader. So you'd be humble, you'd be willing to do the tough, dirty work that you're asking others to do, because that builds confidence in the leader. And I would say, be authentic. If you are an inauthentic person, you're going to have struggle to connect with your employees and to your guests, and they're going to see through it. So you put those three things together, and in my opinion, you have rock solid foundation to be a tremendous leader, because you're going to be open to learn, you're going to be open to feedback, you're willing to get your hands dirty, you're going to understand the details of your business. Because like right now, obviously I'm not on the front line of my business, but I know everything that's going on because I make myself do work sometimes, just to keep it fresh and make sure I understand the details of the work. And you have to be authentic, because they'll run from you if you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are three great advice, and I think now part of the audience are hotel school students. So what you have given now are something. If they don't listen to any other episode or any of my podcasts, 300 podcasts, and listen to this one, they learn a lot.
I appreciate that, and I will say to any students who are listening, it's very important that you recognize two things about your career. One is you will be graded or assessed on the quality of your work. 100%, but you will equally be assessed on the perception of the quality of your work. So you have to make sure that if you have ambition, you want to be upwardly mobile. It's not just do great work. It's make sure that people know that you're doing great work, or else you're going to get passed up by someone who's more out there, even though you might be doing the most work. That actually happened to me. I got passed up by someone who was an empty suit. It ultimately caught up to him, but it caused me a lot of consternation because I was the one carrying the department. So that would be another piece of advice for the young people starting their careers.
Excellent. Your business blends hospitality, humanity, and technology. Which of those three pushes you out of your comfort zone the most, and why?
That is a phenomenal question. I'm not sure that any of them push me out of it right now, but when we were beginning the transition, the technology was definitely pushing us out of our comfort zone, out of my comfort zone, because we were all about human to human consulting and training on site. And we had to embrace a new reality for ourselves in technology. And that really made us very uncomfortable and feel insecure a little bit. And even our customers were like, we're not sure this is going to work. We like you guys coming on site. So there was a lot of trepidation about it, but it ended up working out great. And that's why I would say now I'm pretty comfortable with the balance that we've struck on those three. But what a probing question that is.
Well, because it makes me think about myself a lot. And one of the things that hospitality, I think that maybe it's in my blood, and humanity, I think that's I've been through having quite a bit of experience through my life, work, and personal. That has helped me a lot. But technology is always something I'm very keen and very curious about. And I made a conscious decision for the month of November. I was supposed to go to a conference that I've been going for annually to, and it's mostly over networking. But I got an invitation to moderate two panel discussions. And the conference is about work smarter, not harder. And it's obviously the AI thing, and it's about the PMS, and it's about all the latest technologies, which is continuously evolving. And I realize I don't know enough of it, and I'm moderating a panel discussion, so I'm kind of already a little bit sweating about this too. I have to learn my stuff and then give them some interesting questions, and also that this will obviously interest the audience, and also that I'm not the dummy in the room. I'm trying to at least be ready for it. So those are the things has been a challenge for me. But I thought I'd take that as a challenge and opportunity to learn more about technology, having these brilliant people with me on a stage, and we have hopefully a good conversation.
Well, I applaud you for taking the challenge, but it is an interesting topic to deep dive into. I don't think you'll have a hard time going down the YouTube rabbit hole about AI. But here, I would give you a keyword to search. It'll get you really well started, is ontology. Search ontology AI, and that'll take you right down the rabbit hole of semantic reasoning and agentic AI.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I also made a decision in that conversation that I have with the panelists that avoid using the word AI. I'm going to challenge them not to use the word AI because it's very tempting to just kind of brush over things with the word AI. So that's going to be one of the things I have written down for myself already.
Yeah, they're not going to appreciate that very much, I think, but it's a great challenge. They have to use like semantic reasoning or something. They'll have to come up with an alternative.
Yeah. Very good. I love this conversation with you. You mentioned generational differences in the workforce. What surprised you and most about how Gen Z approaches hospitality compared to your own early career?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it. There's so much dependence on technology, phones, screens, that there is a epidemic, I think, of a breakdown of social aptitude in the younger generation. I think it's actually getting better. The older Gen Zers, I think, are the ones struggling the most, the ones that were like in high school during the lockdowns. And then, so the rise of social media is like eye contact is a perfect example. There's a lot of young people that they struggle to make eye contact. So I think that, when I was young, we had computers, but they were green screen. I mean, they were not like they are now. There was no cell phones. I remember getting a pager as a manager, and I thought I had arrived because I had a pager. But so I think it's the fact that there has been a loss of some social acumen that is making it awkward for the younger people. But I think it's starting to get better. I think the pendulum is swinging back toward being more social. I see my younger son, his generation is more social. So I have hope that it will improve, but that would be the biggest deficit or difference, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed that there was a time when you could hardly get eye contact with somebody because they were looking down, and it was difficult to have a conversation. You didn't really know what was going on there, but yeah. There's hope.
There is hope, yes. I love when you're talking to someone and they're looking up above your head. You just know they're not looking you in the eyes. It's such a strange sensation, but I think it is getting better.
Yeah. So I said to someone I was training that, if you are shy and you have a difficulty to have eye contact with someone, just look them slightly above in the middle, above the eye. I mean, it almost looks like you're looking at them in the eye, and you don't feel creepy about it, and they will appreciate it.
Yeah. You can look at their eyebrows. They're not going to be able to tell the difference.
Beyond business growth, what personal legacy do you want your work in hospitality to leave behind?
We talk about this a lot internally. One of the things we don't advertise as much, we don't talk about as much, is the impact our programs have on the lives of the frontline people. We get testimonials back from them over the years. And I think what I would like my legacy to be, or the legacy of Frontline Performance Group to be, is that we fundamentally improved the perception of the frontline in such a way that it made it a more desirable job. They get treated better, they make more money, they have a higher quality of life. Rather than being viewed as a necessary evil or an expense line on a P&L, they're viewed as a real contributor to the business. That would be the legacy that I'd want to leave.
Great. Just a practical question with the hotel that has been, hotels has been around for several hundred years. We always have had that desk separating the staff and the guest. What is your view? Can we finally get rid of the desk?
I think that it is interesting. I think that the desk, when done properly, gives the interaction structure.
Yeah.
If you're just standing there, I feel like it would be very loose, but I don't like it being a barrier. It's more like a tabletop and you're exchanging ideas, across the table. So I'm not sure that we should get rid of it, but we should make sure we're not using it as a barrier, to your point. It needs to just be point of facilitation, a point of meeting in the middle. Otherwise, I think there'd be a lot of milling around in the lobby and it would lose some structure, maybe. But I get your point. It should not be viewed as a barrier in the relationship between the guest and the front line.
Yeah. I was thinking in a smaller hotel where it's 50 rooms or not, where you have not a huge flow of people coming and going, that you could actually make it more like a living room style of a place. And obviously you recognize the staff member will have an iPad and you can have a conversation sit down and have a conversation, and that becomes sort of that, what we call the checking in.
Yeah. You could almost stand next to a table. So there's a computer or there's some stuff there. So you have an anchor in the room. Because, there's a lot of research about sitting down or standing up. So they generally want people standing up when you're giving service. So, but it's an interesting idea. It's just changed the space so it's more like your living room. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. Good. Well, I have two more questions for you before we wrap up. One question that I like to ask all my guests, besides what you have talked about, what other trends do you see happening in hospitality that hoteliers should take note of?
There's a couple. I mean, there's things we've talked about, technology and stuff, obviously, but there's one that I think is interesting. I was just reading about this the other day, and it rings true to me, is there's the digital nomad now. There's the ability to work anywhere, and a lot of people are actually working and traveling at the same time. I think the term they're using is bleisure, business and leisure combined. I think that is a trend that's going to continue, particularly with younger professionals when Gen Z start coming into their careers. I think they're going to be doing a lot of that, working out of hotel rooms. So there could be opportunities to create working spaces that are semi-private, but are still in the public area of the hotel, making rooms more conducive to real work. Like one thing I haven't seen, but I would imagine is going to become a thing is like video lighting at the desk in a hotel room, because they're always very dark. And I travel with a light now because I do a lot of video calls from the hotel room. So I think that trend of people working and traveling is going to start to blend. You can almost live in a hotel and travel around and work. I think that's a trend that's coming, and it would be something to be tuned into early, I think.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I don't travel that much, but I can imagine this is one of the things that when you have these calls and you don't have enough lighting, and the hotel room, in fact, it's not designed to provide that kind of sufficient lighting. So, having a small, like I have one of those small lights here for illumination for our episode here, and that's enough. I could travel around with that. And
inevitably, when you're in a hotel and you sit at the desk to do video, the window is behind you, which is the worst lighting scenario. I've actually turned the desk around and had to move it to sit so that the light was coming this way. So just hoteliers thinking about that could be a differentiator for people that are trying to book a room. And it says, look, we're built for video conferencing at your desk in your room. Could be a significant differentiator.
Yeah. And design those chairs so you can sit straight,
Not like, that's great.
Good. Well, lastly, if people are interested to find out more about the Frontline Performance Group, how can they do so? How can they reach out to you, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously have a website. It's www.frontlinepg.com. That's paulgeorge.com. All the information's on there. There's contact forms, there's case studies, there's videos, there's all kinds of stuff on there. And then on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. First initial, last name. I'm one of the lucky ones. I got early, so there's no like codes and stuff. It's just G Toffetti at the LinkedIn URL. Would love to hear from you. Connect with me. I like to connect with people in the industry. And those are the two most effective ways, I think, if they would like to get in contact.
Excellent. Geoffrey, I appreciate that you joined today's episode. And I really think we need to do another one here and maybe have one particular episode and topic, and then we just dig a little bit deeper in, because having you as a conversation partner here has been such a pleasure.
I appreciate that very much. And I'd love to come back and do one that like practical upselling, like some techniques your audience could benefit from. I'd be happy to do that.
Let's do that. We'll put that on the calendar for next year for sure.
Fantastic. Sam-Erik, it was great to be with you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us this week on The Social Hotelier Show. Make sure to visit our website, The Social Hotelier Show, blueberry.net, where you can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or via RSS, so you never miss a show. While you're at it, if you find value in this show, we appreciate a rating in Apple Podcast. Or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.